All right, Ricky. I think we're actually live. This is it. I think this is the moment. This is where I'm also like, are we live? Oh my gosh. I'm so excited though for this
Always
conversation.
exciting.
Say it again.
I said it's always exciting.
I know, but that feeling of like, are we live? I'm like, there's nothing like it. So every time it gets me, you know what I'm saying?
You get to see the bloopers in real time as we start.
Tell it. I'm like, Lord, it's all there. But I'm super excited for this conversation. It's about to get real juicy, no doubt, per usual. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to go ahead and just dive in and we'll keep people updated as we go. But I'll be definitely checking in on questions and making sure that everything is, happening smoothly. But excited for today. So welcome everyone to our cafecito. Ricky and I are very excited to have you join us as we dive deeply into our history of LatinxEd and our own entrepreneurial journeys, manifesting this bold vision for our community. So we'll be getting into the real talk and the growth that we've experienced over the years. And so to our audience out there, drop a hello, let us know you're here. Feel free to drop your thoughts also in the conversation in the chat, and also any comments or questions that you have. We'd love to weave them into our conversation. So that being said, Ricky, you want to start us off with some introductions? Tell us who you are.
Yeah, no, of course, of course. I'm so glad that I get a chance to do this. I'm not gonna lie, I've been a little jealous watching the lives and just like seeing Latinx Ed flourish online. I'm like, hey, when am I gonna get this cafecito with Elaine? I'm just teaching with you, so it's nice to sort of co-facilitate this conversation today. I'm Ricky Hurtado. I'm one of the co-founders and co-executive directors of LatinxEd. Elaine and I have been in the trenches together for a few years, and you'll learn more about that. Actually, spans back even to college. My family is from El Salvador. They are from La Capital, San Salvador. I was born in LA, in California, but after a few years of living there, moved to North Carolina. So I am very much a product of the South, a product of rural North Carolina, where I grew up with, mi pupusas, tacos, and barbecue, and so that's a little bit about me and some of my background is. I think in terms of what I studied and sort of my brief sort of anecdote of my journey through college is I'm a first gen college student, product of our public schools. Went to Carolina, studied business administration, but my concentration was really entrepreneurship. I was really thinking about how we create organizations, institutions that allow us to both benefit society and have a social impact, but also sort of generate revenue and be self-sustaining. And that led me to study eventually public policy at Princeton University, where I was thinking about how to really change our systems to make sure that we are leading a more equitable and just future for everyone in our country. So excited to be here with you, Elaine.
Amen. I'm like, yes. I'm here for all of it. And I love us telling our story because I think everyone will get a glimpse into our relationship in the sense that we are very much two different brains doing this work. And it's so cool to have that, in this partnership too. So I'll start off. So hi, everyone. My name is Elaine Townsend-Uten. I am also the other co-founder, co-director of LatinxEd, and a little bit about my journey and kind of who I am and where I'm coming from. So I was born in Peru, Viva Peru, okay, what's up? But I came over when I was really young. So I actually was raised in the South, in the rural South on top of that. So Georgia, Arkansas, North Carolina. Every time I say that, Ricky's like, LOL, Georgia, Arkansas. I have to like bust it out. But also North Carolina, and North Carolina has been home for the longest. Waxhaw, North Carolina in particular, Union County. But very much grew up in rural, two stoplight kind of towns. So that's very much a big part of my evolution and also my journey and trying to figure out who I am too, and growing up in very predominantly white spaces too, and trying to connect to my culture and my roots was a challenge. But I'm excited to also kind of unpack how that's manifested now in the work that we do. So a little bit about me and kind of where I ended up studying. I'm also a first generation college student, so that journey to college was memorable, to say the least. Unfortunately, not for the good reasons, but it was still a really big moment in my journey of going to college. It was a big deal for me and my family, and so I ended up going to UNC Chapel Hill as well, and studied middle grades education at the School of Education there at UNC. I also ended up teaching for 2 years in South Korea, teaching English through the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship. And that journey coupled with UNC just tied it in and encouraged me to keep going and go to graduate school at Harvard Graduate School of Education and actually study technology, innovation, and education. And so that piece for me has also been another thread that's very much weaved my work together and thinking about how can we really bridge the gap when it comes to access, especially for rural communities, and how can we utilize technology, digital technology, but also thinking of people also as a form of technology to really bridge that, whether it's the gap of information, but also to build community. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, this lane of work too, very much a practitioner and very, trying to figure out how to also, influence also people's hearts and minds and also shape and shift the way that our community is perceived. And that's such an important part of building community. So that's something that I'm very, nerdy about. Also the organizational management of it all. It's things that really get me excited and thinking about how we can actually do this work. So that's a little bit about us. Oh my goodness, this chat is popping already. Okay, so hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us and checking in. We're super excited to be here and to be with you all. And we have a lot of students here in the chat. And so we both have co-taught together, which Ricky, that was super fun when we were co-teaching together. But so it's exciting to see all of the students that we've shared, but also students that are coming in from our courses that we teach now at the School of Ed. So we're both also teaching. I know we're like, such great students, incredible students. So we're really honored to have you in this space. And again, encouraging everybody out here, come through with your questions, let us know what you want to know. And we're excited to tell you it all, essentially. We have a lot of history to get through today, right? 2 years is a long time and it goes even beyond that. So we're going to dive in, but we're actually going to dive in with a snapshot first, just to kind of give you some information, and then we're going to be breaking it down, right? So just a little bit about LatinxEd. So we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to amplifying the lived experiences of Latinx immigrant families to break down educational barriers in North Carolina. So we're manifesting this mission through our work with multiple initiatives, and we're going to be talking all about them today, so I'm really excited to share more. But that snapshot, right? So Somos Carolina is dedicated to positive racial ethnic identity development for Latinx youth, starting in middle school, going all the way up to high school. We have College y Consejos, which is college access for Latinx students, high school students in particular here in North Carolina. We also have a competition and also a very big virtual event that's coming up. That's Latinx 20 Under 20, which is a competition highlighting the Latinx youth in our state and their genius. Okay, it's very exciting. And then also a podcast, okay, because everybody got to have a podcast these days. Yes, so Nuestro South, which is such an incredible, really another, I think all of our work, I think of it in many ways as love letters. And I feel like this is another love letter to the South and capturing our history and telling that through story. And so that one's a really exciting podcast that everyone should also check out, but we'll tell you more juicy, get into the details of these initiatives. And I think the most exciting part is that there is a way for you to participate in all of it. So we're going to be sharing more about how you can also get involved and be a part of this movement in this conversation too.
Yeah, no, of course. That's such a great overview, Elaine, of everything we've been up to the last few years. And I think the best part about this is in our efforts to sort of understand where we've been, where we are, and where we're going as an initiative, as a community, and as a state. It's very much been a community effort. And so in the communities that we worked in, from Lee, Chatham, Orange County to the Greater Triangle area, all the way to universities we've visited across the state, we've seen that there is so much hunger for this work. But the only way really to move forward with this work is to continue building that, as Martin Luther King referred to, right, that beloved community that sees the same vision and supports you every step of the way. And so, especially in these difficult times that we're living through with COVID-19, that we know has been disproportionately impacting, nuestra comunidad across the state and the nation, as Latinx families are disproportionately impacted by COVID. This work is more important now than ever as people struggle with public health challenges and educational challenges across the board. We need initiatives like LatinxEd, and I'm certainly not shy about saying that to everyone that will listen to me. And so if you're listening now, if you're a previous supporter, if you're a current supporter, or potentially a future supporter on this live, consider throwing some coins our way, make a donation to LatinxEd. You can go to our website, www.latinxed.org, and to continue supporting the work. Or even if you're curious and want to learn more, be sure to sign up for our listserv to receive our newsletters and updates from us via our social media pages or on our website. There's an easy link for you to sign up there. But we'd love to invite you to join our community and make sure you are on this journey with us.
Love that. Thank you. I just dropped the link. Okay. So y'all have it in the chat. But so let's get into it, Ricky. Let's start with the storytelling. I'm like, there's so much to tell. So we're going to, try to get focused here, okay, but also give you some of the really important milestones that we've hit in this journey. And it honestly starts back when we were in college, Ricky, which is surreal because that's a long time ago. I'm like, we're about to date ourselves, okay? But Ricky and I both met when we were in college. And I did not, okay, so Ricky does not know I'm about to do this, but I'm going to share a little photo, okay, of me and Ricky. Okay, this is very much a representative of our
You are so embarrassing.
Surprise. Okay, but I thought this picture cracks me up every time because even though we were so, hustling constantly, we were doing it very much like two ships in the night going the opposite direction kind of thing. Like we didn't really know each other in college, but we did it, so we were super involved in mentorship program, which we're going to talk about, called SLY, and that's where we met, and that's where our paths crossed. And I just thought this picture is so funny because you can see us both very focused and working, but like we did not know each other that well. So I always think that's so funny. Anyways, I will stop sharing my screen. Okay, but I wanted to surprise you there. But that's us in college. And so this journey starts back when we started working with the Scholars Latino Initiative. So Ricky, do you want to start us? Oh, I was going to say, I can either start us off or you can start. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think SLY, so much of the DNA of SLY and what we did as college students, you envisioned at Carolina, right? I think that part of the story isn't told very often. I'd love for you to start to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this work and sort of what was that motivation and drive that kept you going.
100%. And if there are any like SLY alums out here, okay, mentors, mentees, let us know. We'd love to say hi because we are a big community, right? And our work very much also stems, and I say our work in our own development in many ways was catalyst, through SLY. So let me start off. All right. So I told a little bit about my going to college experience. Was really hard. It was really lonely. I didn't have the resources at my school. I didn't, also first gen, so didn't have mentors to reach out to and ask for help. I had a very supportive mom who was, going to kick my butt to college. Okay. She was not going to let me lose or let go of that dream, but it was a really stressful experience. So when I got to UNC and still trying to figure out, that first year at college, it was very much struggling though. I'll put that out there. But I also was looking for something meaningful, something that I could be a part of that was bigger than myself, right? And so I was in the pit. It was Fall Fest, right? And these very excited, okay, people were just like flagging me down with this sign that said like mentor a Latino student. And I was like, what? Tell me more, okay? Because I think that was another piece of evolution that I was on, was also connecting to my roots and then also kind of trying to make sense of who I was. And the college was a very much, I was hungry for that in college. And so this opportunity popped up and I learned more about it. And I was like, oh my goodness, it was helping students figure out how to go to college and how to go through the application process. And I was like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. If I could help at least one student not have the experience that I had, going through that college application process, it would all be worth it. And so I joined a very passionate group of people that were, just constantly hustling. Okay, we were hustlers in trying to help essentially Latinx high school students apply to college, and specifically focusing on Jordan Matthews High School, which was in Chatham County, which was about 30 minutes from Chapel Hill. So we would be hopping in our cars and heading down and hosting events and offering workshops. And what I thought was so beautiful about SLY too was that college students were very much the passion that was fueling Sly. And so that was, I think, another part that I was just so excited to be a part of, and to see the and to have a role there. And then it was also connecting my interest in education and showing me a way that we could do it on the ground, and actually turn that into practice. And so I always think back to, I'm like, whew, I was a sophomore and ended up mentoring all 3 years. Shout out to my mentee, Danubio. Okay, she's the best. First of all, I think that was another beautiful part of Sly, was just having the privilege of mentoring her and having that relationship with her. She taught me so much, and our relationship went deep. Okay, this is my little sister, y'all. Like, her daughter was my flower girl at my wedding. That's how deep it goes. And that relationship is something that I always cherish from my work with Sly too, was just learning more through her journey, and also figuring out how to, help somebody else apply to college. So that's like a snapshot. I'll definitely will probably unpack even more. But Ricky, let me turn over to you.
Yeah, no, of course. You're taking me down memory lane. I'm like remembering those days in the pit where folks like Sam and Caitlin Carr, if y'all are on here or watch this later, shout out to y'all, because I think it was y'all that recruited me to be a part of Sly. I know definitely Caitlin Carr was the person that interviewed me to become a mentor. It felt like my first job interview. They took it so seriously. We got such good mentors in the program. But I think that what called me to get involved in this work is sort of this personal tie to the mission, right? Where I saw myself reflected in the stories of the students that Sly served. And I sort of glossed over I gave you the highlights of my story in my intro, but it's really in the journey of my family and my personal journey, where sort of, the Sly and LatinxEd really live, right? And so my family fled El Salvador in 1980 to escape a civil war. They were 20 years old. And that's, it was not a glamorous trip to LA. Like, people may think as I tell that story, it was, it's imagine, your family or you fleeing and leaving half your family behind as a civil war, completely tore apart your home country. And so that's always been the backdrop to my life and the backdrop to our challenges in North Carolina as well. Growing up in rural North Carolina, in high school, my parents knew that I needed to go to college, but we weren't really sure how to connect A and B, right? How do you get from point A to point B? And so I worked 2 jobs to make sure I could pay for my SAT prep books and the fees, college application fees, test fees, and make sure I had gas to sort of do all the extra things you need to do to get into college, right? I worked on Saturday mornings from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. I worked after school, was on a soccer team, did all the things that you think you're supposed to do to get into college. And so after sort of going through that arduous journey and being able to get something like the Moorhead Kane Scholarship to go to Carolina, once you're there, and I'm not trying to be dramatic or, funny, like it felt like you had survived the Hunger Games, and it felt like you look back and it's just like, yo, like there's all these people that are struggling still. There's all these people that didn't have that golden ticket that you got. What do you do to make sure that you are paving a way for more, right? So it is this sort of this intuitive sense of paying it forward, because we know that you may have made it, but so much of your family, your community, your friends haven't. And you begin to peel the onion there, and you begin to understand so much of it wasn't grit or drive or just didn't have what it takes to go to college. So much of it was structural in nature, right? I began to learn many years later when I was an adult that many of the friends that I questioned why they didn't go to college were actually undocumented, and I didn't even know. They couldn't afford college, right? The barriers that exist due to financial challenges of immigrant families growing up in North Carolina. And so that was sort of at the heart of Sly and what really attracted me to that work, where we had an opportunity to work with our former selves and make sure that they had the support system, the village that we never had. And so, you struck the jackpot and you found the test to the answers, right? You got to make sure everyone knows them to make sure that, they also get through that gamut of really challenging circumstances to make it to a place like Carolina or any other college at UNC. And so that was sort of my Sly origin story. And through that process, I became a mentor to a young man named Omar Macias, who is now on our board and actually just chatted with this week, who is doing really great, works in our public schools now in North Carolina, and reconnected me to my community in Lee County and Sanford, because he went through similar things that I did in life. So It's very much it's a full circle sort of initiative that allowed us to reconnect with issues and communities that we deeply cared about.
100%. And so I just was reading a comment in the chat, and I was reflecting on this today, that those of us that were, in the trenches and running SLY, we're like 18 to 21-year-olds. Like, we had a robust team of people that constantly every year, especially with our leadership transition, would just, I think with how serious we took it, it like was like a magnet for other people that were just as serious about this mission. I think I also, reflecting on that, I'm like, how did we do that when we were in college? Because it was just so exciting for me to find something like SLY in college and just be able to invest, and in many ways, all my time. I think when I was a senior, I stepped into the student co-directorship role of SLY, and I think back to that experience, and this will kind of paint a little bit of a picture of SLY too, and the work that we were doing. But we were inducting 25 students every year, and it was a 101 mentorship model, 3 years for students to start off, high school students starting off in sophomore year, going all the way up until their senior year. And so this meant that we were finding sophomore college students to pair them up with the high school students, then to have a 3-year mentorship with that same mentor for 3 years. And if you do the math, right, that's 75 students, high school students and their families, and 75 college students, and then leadership, that we were also, leaders in that and trying to make it all work. And I just remember hosting events with a really, robust team, but for like 200 people. And then I'm like, how was I like 19, 20 years old and doing all of that? Like, that part I still am like processing, because I'm like, we were intense, y'all, but it was so beautiful. Like, to your point, having such incredible leadership. I think for me, some of the SLY, alum that super inspiring, Diana Iglesias, like, she was just someone I always looked up to and just set such an incredible role model for us in furthering the work. Ignacio too, shout out to Ignacio and Ian. Those were the co-directors that came before me, and they just did such a huge thing of even laying down like documentation. That was a big thing that year, was like, we had to document what we were doing. So it was very much an entrepreneurial journey, but as a student organization.
Yeah.
Where it starts to kick up a notch is when we had it. Also, let me do one more shout out, but to Kitty Stahlberg, who was our part-time program coordinator, and I feel like she also sustained us through that time of like being in the trenches and trying to make some really big dreams happen. But I guess a way we can keep moving the story is talking about you, Ricky, and when you essentially got involved as the first full-time and also executive director of SLY. Do we want to just kind of fast forward there?
Yeah, of course. And I can certainly tell this bit of story and see sort of, your perspective on how we started LatinxEd as well. Yeah, I came back after grad school. I was ready for a new challenge, right? And I knew that if I moved back to North Carolina, let me back up here. I'd been doing a lot of equity work across the country, working with organizations and foundations across the country, and saw the exciting things that were happening across the country to really lift up the narrative of communities of color and low-income communities and what it could look like to really thrive, right? And so I got really excited about some of the work that I'd done in grad school. And so I knew that if I moved back to North Carolina, that work didn't necessarily exist in a robust way, especially work that centered the Latinx community. And so I knew that we would have to build something if we wanted to see it in North Carolina. And it was really upon us, our community, to do that, right? I truly believe that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And it's something that I say on every single meeting and event that I'm a part of, because it really begins by centering the voices that are feeling the impact of our programs, our policies, our institutions, and that understand sort of how to navigate those as well. And so I was hired as the first ED of SLY in 2015. And in my interview was, who would you know? Elaine Townsend there. No, not yet Uten, right? Or maybe you were Uten.
Not yet, no.
You weren't, right? Yeah, Elaine Townsend. And of course, right, Elaine has been so instrumental since the beginning of SLY. Of course, she would be there to interview the first ED, because she had to make sure that we had a good steward taking care of the initiative, right? So
insert Elaine storyline here. I was just a very obsessed alumni. Couldn't get rid of me. Like that was kind of what was happening. So it was like, oh, an interview, so that's a little disclaimer. Okay.
But once starting this role, I very quickly saw that there were limits to the work that we could do. And what I mean by that is that the mentorship program was great when it worked. The college access mission was wonderful when we could reach our students. It was a thriving initiative when we had the money, right? It was an initiative with a lot of potential, but I saw the need as people learned about SLY, and I got calls where at one point I drove all the way to the Outer Banks to do presentations. I've driven to Western Carolina and Western Carolina University and Cherokee area to talk to folks about the intersection of immigration and college access. So when you see that need in every single county in North Carolina, you know that you have to figure out a way to really grow the initiative. Luckily, we like SLY provided such a good sort of platform to launch something new. And so when we sunset SLY, it very much left a door open to starting an initiative like LatinxEd. And before sort of we go into the origin story of LatinxEd, I certainly want to give a shout out to Paul Cuadros and Peter Kaufman, because they recognize the need so early in North Carolina to support undocumented students and then afterwards DACA students, and really figure out a way to help them sort of pave a way to college. And so Paul Cuadros is still a professor at UNC Chapel Hill, and a good friend of mine who still checks in on me regularly to make sure we're doing okay. And Peter, of course, who's in Virginia now. They were very much a part of the SLY familia, and allowed us to sort of thrive there as students. So, but every good story has an end, and so we certainly closed the chapter on SLY a few years ago, and it gave us an opportunity to dream bigger and really sort of address the challenges that we saw in the SLY program every day, right? Which was things like the one-on-one mentoring model. Like I said, it worked when it worked, right? But you lifted up a really important point, Elaine. We were college students, right? And so we were students first. And so we really had to operate on a college schedule. And so sometimes when the students needed us the most over the summer, over breaks, during exam time, students also had exams and they had all these things. And so we needed to figure out a way, how do we really expand the capacity of the initiative and hire full-time folks and really begin to grow and to serve more students, because the need just felt limitless, right? It's just the more students you admitted, the more that needed the support. And so that was a big part of it. The other part for me was sort of logistical and operational. We really saw a need to, while students love coming to Carolina's campus, we really saw a need to really meet students where they are and support families and support students in the communities that we serve. And so we really started rethinking the model and how we serve students in their local communities. And so how do we create in school and after school and summer programs, as opposed to a weekend program where families had to come to Carolina, which poses a challenge for many immigrant families, especially for students who may have undocumented parents and don't have a driver's license or something that will prevent them from traveling long distances. And this became especially dicey once immigration enforcement ramped up after 2016. And families sort of, found themselves under a cloud of fear where, should we actually go to that next event? Should we actually engage with this? While it's a good opportunity, things are just too dicey right now. And so I think our model certainly, our rethinking and shifting of how we approach this work certainly helped in laying the groundwork for being able to expand in the future. And so, but yeah, that was certainly a transition though, right? From going from ending a program like SLY and letting it sunset to then launching a new organization. And so, in between that sort of transition, you came into the picture, Elaine. So how do we go from SLY to LatinxEd, and what was the start looking like?
I have to rewind just a little bit, because I also will have to kind of talk about how I came back beyond just being an obsessed alumni, came back into a more formal role too, as essentially the second full-time hire of Sly. So Ricky coming on in 2015, and then me coming on in 2016. But that decision, I know,
I
good
had
times.
a plan, y'all. I had a plan all along. So
Surreal. But I just tell a little bit about kind of from my perspective that journey, and then getting to LatinxEd is that I came back obsessed alumni, but I was also simultaneously applying to grad school, right? So to head to Harvard in particular, eventually ended up heading to Harvard to study education. And when I was at Harvard, I was just 100% Sly. Obviously, again, I'm obsessed. Okay, so I was thinking though about, it was like in all my classes, they were very project based. And I literally, all my projects, something had to do with Sly. Like it was either I was developing the close of an app that would, help connect mentors to their mentees, and that considering that rural distance that we were experiencing, like I was deep in it. Okay, like it never left me, but it was so exciting to be able to think even more critically about Sly. And so I took ethnic studies, and it was the first time it was offered at Harvard in the Graduate School of Education. And it was a really big kind of moment for me in my own kind of journey. I think I walked into grad school thinking that one of the reasons Sly was so exciting and we were so passionate about it was the relationships, which is very much true in the sense of mentorship. So I was coming and I was like, mentorship is the juice. Like, how do we like deepen mentorship to really, mobilize? And then I took ethnic studies, and I had the kind of one of my first experiences taking a course like this, where it was essentially unveiling all of the history of marginalized communities in the United States that have been left out of, especially the K to 12 experience, and learning history and learning about oneself. And so I was learning about, again, like the history that I was learning was just rocking my world, to the point that I just got to this realization of like, oh my goodness, the curriculum and what we are actually talking about is just as powerful as the relationships that we are forming. And so when I came back, and when you came, and I got Ricky to come up and present a little presentation. This is how the story goes, about Sly at Harvard. And then he slid up in there and was like, "Hey, Elaine, you thinking about coming back?" And I was like, "Absolutely, what?" Yes, tell me more. And so, long story short, I'm very glad that Ricky got me on board, okay, because that was a huge part of like just, I think when I was graduating from grad school, there was a lot going on in my life, and it wasn't having a lot of time to prepare for the job search. But if I could have really prepared, it would have been something in North Carolina, serving the Latinx community. But then it was also daunting thinking about that job search, because what opportunities exist, and feeling like that very specific, interest is very limited. So the fact that, I was able to come back and serve with Ricky in Sly was a huge blessing for me, because I feel like it's not often that we get to return to serve the communities that raised us. And so, but then also coming back with this new kind of vision too, for like, how can we also deepen our connection to self and understand our history and understand who we are as especially Latinos in the South, right? And like what that means for us, and how that's going to also impact our journey in the college application process and into college. And I think that was another piece of the work with Sly that was getting hard to kind of watch unravel, is that we were preparing students to enter college, and then once they were getting to college, like many of us, were then super struggling in college and struggling to make it out, and also having to navigate a lot of the different systems of oppression, right? That the ways that ours, especially our education system, is built, and also the lack of representation there, not having professors, curriculum that also reflect our own narratives, was just part of the struggle that our students were also facing, and having to navigate things like imposter syndrome, and trying to, also navigate predominantly white institutions. And so that was a whole nother layer that was, it felt like it was having a hard time getting into Sly. And so I came back and I was like, that's where I wanted to be. And I was like, that's what I want how I want our curriculum to evolve, is to really start with those conversations, and really building that positive racial ethnic identity development, so that we can then be prepared to really navigate and also reject the negative messaging about who we are in that journey. And so I think where we get to the starting Sly story, right? Or sorry, LatinxEd, is also that vision. And I think when I was trying to pair it with the previous iteration of our work with Sly, Sly had already had such a strong brand around college access that there wasn't a lot of room to get in the identity development piece. Like students were coming very much so ready for the information to figure out how to get to college. And then it was like, okay, but yeah, that's great, but let's stop and talk about identity, you know. And it was like, okay, that's cool and everything, but I'm trying to get to college. So, you know, there was a hard way to kind of pair it in the way that that previous model had been built. So when we got to kind of this crossroads, and Ricky already highlighted a few of the other constraints that we were facing, it was really a hard decision though. It was a hard decision, like, do we, in order to get to the bigger vision and the bigger impact that we could potentially have in our state, I think we need to reset. And that conversation was hard for us. Oh my gosh, it was so hard, because as you can see, I was an obsessed alum. So it was like that, even just trying to release my brain of like the things that we had done that had served us in that moment, but that no longer served us. That letting go of that, and to then reimagine, reset, rebuild, build that foundation was, it was an emotional journey too. And I think when we were going through that process, and we had such a supportive board too that was pointing out ways that this reset would really benefit us in a lot of different ways, but it was a lot of us taking like a step of faith, you know, that this is the direction that we need to go. And in that process, I mean, when I think back to like Sly alum were also so pivotal in helping us through that journey. Like Tasha Prados out there. Tasha, what's up, Tasha? You know, she helped us with the rebranding. She helped us with the messaging and really laying the foundation for what we were imagining and what we were envisioning. And she was a key part of it. Our board was super important, still is. Shout out to Angelita Beckham, who's just been an incredible chair of our board, who's really helped us navigate some of those, also really the challenging parts of being you know, starting something new too, in the sense of like, how are we goal setting, how are we vision setting, how are we ensuring that our mission is what it needs to be, you know, and really guiding the rest of our, you know, whether it's our programs or our staff. And so that's also been part of the journey of learning how to run a nonprofit. I was like was not, you know, I think that was something that we just kind of stepped into, not necessarily, you know, there's not really a handbook out there. There's a lot of info though. I will say there's a lot of resources, but it was still new to, you know, it was a new role that we hadn't played before. So that was in just being a co-founder too, what that looked like. So that was another really big part of that journey. But what I think, and I'll throw it back over to you, Ricky, to kind of continue this and talk about some of the beginnings, right? But just solidifying our mission has just been such an important part of this journey of like that. Why is it important to amplify the lived experiences of Latinx immigrant families, right? Like why is that an important part? And we can tell you all the ways, right? Like when it comes to people, especially in the South, I can't tell you how many times we've run into the issue of like, how do we serve Latinx students? That's like a big question that we get. And I think there's a few answers to that one, but in particular, we're not like this four, you know, I'm like, all these words are coming to mind, but it's like, we are human beings, you know, we have our own cultures, we have our own ways of breathing and living. And then we're also very diverse in that way too. And we're complex, right? And so just being able to make sure that that complexity is represented in the narratives that are in our community is really important. And so that's part of it. And then also getting to this piece about breaking down these educational barriers. And so I think this is a good time to kind of pivot back to you, Ricky, and kind of talking about just the start of it all, and like kind of, and then starting us on our timeline of like what we've accomplished since the beginning.
Yeah, no, of course, of course. I mean, I think you're certainly right. We had some hard choices to make. I'm grateful we had really supportive board members and folks that have been there since the beginning. Shout out to Nicholas Steiner, who former professor, and then our the director of the Center for Global Initiatives at the time. That was really incredibly supportive of our leadership. And, you know, we would throw him crazy ideas of what we wanted to do, and he was nothing but supportive. And so to sort of launch from university initiative and sunsetting that initiative to then founding and launching a 501c3 nonprofit organization, it's certainly not easy, but we certainly found support throughout that process and how to do that. I always say that we felt like baby birds that were about to hop out of the nest, right? As we launched this organization, and as soon as we were about to hop out, we got yanked back into the nest at UNC because we had a great partner, future partner, and now current partner, the School of Education and the dean there, that really saw the same vision that we did in our work. and believe that to really grow this to its full potential, we could certainly benefit from having a strong partnership, like a partnership at UNC Chapel Hill with the School of Education. And it finally dawned on me and Elaine, it's just like, wait a minute, we are an education initiative. We should be at the School of Education.
Basically, kind of pivoted in such a like a global kind of perspective, just of where SLI had started off. And so we definitely were like, this is more local, and then this is also education. So yeah, it was I think very fulfilling to have someone in the field of education be like, y'all belong over here. That meant a lot, and it's continued that partnership. So yeah, that's huge.
Exactly. And so since 2018, we've been able to accomplish a lot. And I think Elaine is really good to point out that, it's when you look back and reflect on this, it's just like, wow, because we have been sprinting what feels like for years. And it took a global pandemic to slow us down and really sort of pause and think about, like, what are we doing? How do we improve it? And how do we continue growing this work across North Carolina? We've had things in 2018. We launched the first competition of its kind in North Carolina called 20 to 20, which is really focused on lifting up the leadership and lived experiences of Latinx students across North Carolina. You've seen these sorts of competitions before in various capacities, 30 under 30, 40 under 40, et cetera. But we really wanted to highlight the young people, the next generation of leaders that's really going to transform North Carolina. We get a chance, we have the opportunity, the privilege of seeing these young people every day, and always end our events just like astounded, just like, wow, like these kids are incredible. I could not have done what they do at their age, because sort of the stakes seem to be getting higher, the challenges higher, but somehow, some way, some students are still finding ways of meeting it and going above and beyond. And so we wanted to be sure that those stories don't stay internal to Latinx Ed. We want the world to know, because it is incumbent on us to also change the narrative of who we are and what role we have here in North Carolina. And we want to make sure to shine a spotlight on those young people. And so it's been so much fun. It's also an opportunity to sort of bring our community together on an annual basis. We did so in 2018 and 2019, had a big celebration at UNC Chapel Hill that brought a lot of folks together, a lot of families together. This year it's virtual, so please join us. Check out 20 under 20 this year. We're going to unveil our 20 new winners. They're incredible. We're so excited for you to meet them. Tickets are $15, so you can check those out. Pretty soon you'll be getting a lot of our social media posts about it, or buy tickets on our website. So that's a quick plug there. Check it out. But that is just one of many things that we've been able to do to really highlight the brilliance in our community. We think it's so important. The same way that we've shared our stories today with you, we think it's really important for our students to have that opportunity to share those stories, because it's by that practice that they begin to really see themselves as a part of the fabric of North Carolina. And I always tell my students that you are the expert of your own experience. And that is very much a pivotal part of them seeing themselves as leaders today and leaders tomorrow. And so part of that work is also helping them cultivate their own identity beyond just leadership and sort of these soft skills, but also like in their roots and history of their immigrant families and where they came from. And so that's sort of where Somos Carolina comes in, and is really our flagship initiative of what we're doing at LatinxEd. So much of what Elaine has described around ethnic studies and the understanding of sort of the history of our community is so pivotal to Somos Carolina. So I definitely want to, let you talk a little bit about that initiative, because it has certainly been your child in sort of how you have sort of grown it from nothing to really be something beautiful that we've seen happen over the summer.
Well, that is real. It is very much a baby in many ways. That I literally was giving birth to a baby on the side to the point. There's too much imagery that I'm like, that piece of nurturing though, and starting something new is just been, that's talk about 2018 and 2019, is that was what was very much happening. So Somos Carolina is a 5-year program that students can start in middle school and go all the way up into high school. We center three, what we call the 3 L's, which is Latinidad, so understanding who we are as essentially Latinos in the South, right? And then also unpacking our individual cultures too, and getting closer to our history and understanding the importance of who's come before us. But what's also really important about understanding an identity that, one, we cannot also change about ourselves, like this is who we are, right? Is how do we take the strengths and the assets that we have gained from that identity, and then manifest it into our roles as leaders and learners. And so that is the other two L's, which is learning and leadership. Y'all know, I don't know, you don't know this about me, I love alliteration. Okay, so we are big on that. But what's so important about thinking about who we can be as learners and leaders is sometimes the connection to, you know, of how we've been navigating or having to confront negative messaging about who we are has also trickled into our maybe even mindsets about how we manifest who we are in our roles as learners and then in our roles as leaders. And then on top of that, having to navigate systems that are also not built for us, not that have created a lot of gaps for us also in our own understanding of self. And so Somos is very much, we, especially with Somos, it's a love letter to our younger selves, and being able to bridge that gap, to also feel like you can be in a community where you belong, and also an environment that is dedicated to your learning, that's also inclusive and equitable. That is our vision for Somos. And we actually just want to play a video for you to kind of get a picture of Somos and kind of get an understanding of what it is from also the student perspective. So we're going to go ahead and play that and then keep going. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, here we are. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit play.
Somos Carolina is an educational opportunity for Latinx students to explore who they are, where they come from, and also think about where they're going in their future. We're focusing on personal narrative at this stage, and students are exploring their history, their family history, things that they love about their culture, and exploring how they can tie that into how they learn in the classroom, but also how they connect to leadership.
When we're in a class, it's not really like school. It's more like a discussion where your opinion is valid.
We're excited to be able to provide this opportunity to students to be able to explore who they are, reflect on their family, and it's been really meaningful to see them walk away being so proud.
Coming to Somos Carolina, it really hasn't changed my identity, but I've thought of it a lot more than before I came here.
I think what sets our program apart is that our leadership, our instructors are coming from the space. We're from North Carolina, have been raised in North Carolina.
I feel that I am affirmed and that this work is really needed. There's a lot of work to be done in this community, so I hope that there will be a bigger impact in the future.
Having a strong focus on culture, on community, and building that support network for them is eventually leading them to this path towards college that will eventually be able to help them fulfill their purpose.
I think Somos Carolina made me a more diverse person, a more proud person.
Somos Carolina is fun, inspiring, and educational. It is probably one of the best programs we could be at.
I would absolutely come back here next year if I got the opportunity to.
Somos Carolina makes me feel proud of being Latina.
Somos Carolina is my family.
All right, we're back. All right, so I think what has been such a powerful part of Somos is, and as you heard in the stories of students being able to have this community, one, especially with representation in their instructors, two, that's teachers that are caring about their identity and excited to amplify that and the stories that come along with it. So Somos has just been such a beautiful journey. And right now we're starting essentially our high school chapters that are right now in Lee County and also in Orange County at Orange High School as well, but then on all the high schools in Lee County right now. So that's been also really exciting as Jose Cisneros in particular really gets that off the ground, which has been an incredible journey to be with. So I'll throw it over to you, Ricky. I know we're coming close on time. So if you want to dive in and start talking a little bit about our next initiative that came to being, which was Nuestro South.
Yeah, of course. You've heard both me and Elaine continue to drive home this point around storytelling and the stories of our communities and us being able to tell our own stories. Oftentimes others tell our stories for us, and it really revise that narrative of who we are and where we've been. We felt that continuing to lift up the voices of Latinx youth is really important as part of our work. And an opportunity came up to partner on a podcast and really a multimedia platform that would allow us to tell these stories, but also how they're connected to history. And so shout out to Dr. Julie Weiss at the University of Oregon, who is the author of Corazón de Dixie, which is really where all this started. I remember actually seeing this book at UNC bookstore when I would be procrastinating for my work and just take a stroll for lunch and go check out the books. And it was like stories about Latinos in the South. And it's just not books that you regularly see. And so I picked it up, was like, this is cool. I bought it. Then fast forward a few months, Eric Valera, who is at Community Works, is their chief operating officer and has served in a number of roles for our community across the South. We connected and told me about this professor who had written this book and how he really wanted to connect to what was happening in North Carolina now. And what do you know? It was Dr. Weiss and Corazón de Dixie, where they had made a connection and tried to figure out how do we begin to tell these stories and really allow youth to center themselves in this narrative about the South. And so we have taken that book, turned it into a podcast essentially with incredible hosts and producers like Dorian Gomez, brilliant filmmaker and documentary maker, who's been doing a ton of work in the Triangle area. Axel, Daisy, who is now at Harvard. I think she's like getting 7 degrees or something like that. Axel, who is now I believe a college advisor and a Duke alum. And Brian Mejia, who is at UNC, I believe, still senior. He's in your class. Look at that. Exactly, right? We know how to keep them close. And so they're the hosts to this podcast, and they are able to weave in both the stories of Latino immigrants in the South back to the early 1900s and what's been happening across the South to their own stories of them growing up here in North Carolina. And the point of it is really to make it known that Latinos didn't just appear out of nowhere, right? We've been a part of the narrative of the South for many generations now, but somehow, some way, we continue to be erased from that history and from the stories of these communities. And so it's a beautiful thing for me to sort of see young people wanting to hold on to the stories and tell their own stories and very much say, like, I'm from Turkey, North Carolina, and I am very much North Carolina, right? I am from Durham, and I am very much a part of this fabric of North Carolina. To be able to tell those stories and complicate the narrative too, right? Our community, our Latino community is so diverse, right? We have Daisy and our other hosts, Axel and Brian, who are from Mexico, they're from Central America, and we get students from all across the sort of Latin America that sort of chime in and listen to these stories. And so we've been using this podcast also as an educational resource and been trying to get it into syllabi across universities across the South to make sure that they also get a bit of history and from the voice of Latinx youth to help inform future generations on who we are and what we're about. So check it out, Nuestro South. It's on our website. You can get quick links there, or just this also has its own social media handles, Nuestro South, or I'm sure we'll be pubbing it more in the coming weeks as well, so you can tune in there. But if you haven't listened to it yet, it's great. We've done one season. We're doing a second one right now. We're supposed to do a video sort of mini documentary series, more of a YouTube series, but COVID sort of changed our plans up. So we're producing a second series now, and you'll get to learn more about what we're up to next year in 2021 and beyond. And so that's one of the several ways we're trying to uplift the stories of our community. But of course, our work would not be what it is without continuing to do some sort of college access work. We never lost sight of sort of the dreams of our community, the dreams of the parents that we support, and more than anything, the dreams of our students as they think about what it looks like to expand opportunity for their family and really live out the dreams deferred of their parents as they made their own sacrifices to come to this country. A lot of that is rooted in this sort of educational journey for us. And so we wanted to find a way to continue the legacy of college access work within this initiative. And we saw a opportunity given sort of the new mode of working now with virtual and remote learning, that we could continue supporting students, but in a virtual way. And so introducing College y Consejos, which is our new initiative. And Elaine has also been instrumental in the visioning and launching of that over the last few weeks. And so we're excited to continue the momentum forward with College Access. Right now, we are in prime time of College Access season. So check College y Consejos out. But I definitely want to give Elaine a chance to share more about what that's about.
Sure. And I think I actually want to rewind just a little bit and talk about how Somos leads into also College y Consejos in many ways. So I think when we think about college access and you think about starting in middle school, like where do you start? And I think college and applying to college is so much about narrative too. Either we all remember those personal statements, and those personal essays that really challenged you to get deeper on who you are and where you want to go. And for us, and especially our connection to ethnic studies and just history in general, right? If we have a clear understanding of where we come from, we'll have a clear understanding of where we're going. And so Somos in many ways is setting the intention for something like college and pursuing your purpose. And right, there's so many different ways we can get to our purpose. And college also in particular can be a great instrumental tool to be able to get us closer there. So as we dive into College y Consejos now, which just launched literally like September 1st, which feels like 3 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. We've been like hard at work, and our College y Consejos team too has been fantastic. And so you've heard a little bit in our previous Facebook Lives about College y Consejos from our two virtual coaches, Kiara and Aranda, and then also Lina Palencares. And our team is also led by Alice Dalba, who has been with us since SLY. And Alice, just shout out to you. You've been such a huge part of our work and also inspiring us to keep going, and also to be able to bring also this college access work to life as well, and reimagining it. And also simultaneously sunsetting SLY at the same time. So that is, she's been such a huge part of our journey. And so as we think about College y Consejos now too, is being able to provide the information to students to be able to navigate the college application process. There's a lot of nuances there too. So College y Consejos is grounded in what we call the 3 C's, okay, back to alliteration. So culture, college, and community. So students are able to have culturally relevant experiences and information that will also include and uplift and honor who they are in our space. And on top of that, get to go through this journey with an incredible group of peers that are also going through the same experiences as they go on and encourage each other through that process. And so then when we get to figuring out those nuances of applying to college too, right? There's different barriers for each student. And I think in particular for undocumented students or students coming from mixed status families, there's a lot of hurdles when it comes to filling out things like FAFSA or trying to find funding in particular, but also having to navigate a lot of systems that are complicating, but specifically for our students who have 2 last names, even that is part of the hardship of applying to college. And so those are the resources and the information and the knowledge that our team has. And so that's been another incredible way to continue our college access work and serving our students. And in this way, we get to serve students across the state, which is incredible. So students are coming from everywhere right now in North Carolina. In many ways, we've always been a hotline. So this way we actually get to capture who we're serving in a more intentional way and be able to build those relationships. So if you know a 11th or 12th grade Latinx student that is in North Carolina and that is applying to college or thinking about it, this is the space they need to be in. And definitely reach out to us. We have all the connections. You can find ways to get connected on our website or also follow College y Consejos on Instagram, but that's a really huge opportunity that we're able to offer, especially virtually this fall and hopefully in the spring too, and just keep it going, right? Keeping furthering our work there, and also, shameless plug for the financial support of our community to keep being able to offer those services for free, because that is the vision, right? That students have access to this type of information, this type of support. So your contributions really matter in that journey. So we're, that's our 4, main initiatives that we've been focusing on. We have plans for even more. And so Ricky, do you want to take us where, start painting the picture of where we're headed?
Yeah, no, of course. We aren't busy enough, so we want to do more. And that certainly includes helping North Carolina, helping our educational institutions, helping our universities, helping our decision makers at the local and state level understand the challenges, but also the opportunities that are in front of us, to make sure that when we talk about an inclusive, equitable education system, we really mean an inclusive, equitable education system that really includes everyone in North Carolina. And increasingly so in many of our school districts, that means a big chunk of the Latino community. And so what what I mean by all this is that we want to be sure that people are learning from us, that we're connecting practice to policy and to the leadership development of our state across communities. And so what that looks like is making sure that we play a role in building a table or helping people get to the table where decisions are made, and making sure that they're contributing their voices as to how we make things better. It's a pretty simple sort of value proposition, but I think one that's incredibly important. As we've been invited, as people learn about our work and people invite us to be a part of commissions, conferences, events, more often than not, we're the only Latinos in the room. And we know from experience that there are brilliant educators, brilliant leaders at the grassroots level, brilliant organizations that deal with these issues every day and have solutions on how we go about it, but just don't have the access to these spaces to really have their voices heard. And so we want to be sure that we're a part of that, and we're in the midst of working on a few initiatives that will allow us to really convene leaders, convene grassroots organizations, and folks who are playing a role in this education space, to ask them, what are you seeing and how do we make it better? Because we know folks have ideas, we just don't have the resources to really make them come to fruition. And so we're excited to be launching that next year, and are hopeful that this allows us to have a bigger voice, a bigger role in the future of education here in North Carolina.
And I think to really like manifest that vision, I think part of our the roads that we have ahead of us, or the needs that we have ahead of us, is to really build capacity, right? That throwback to like 2018, 2019, where you and I were the only full-time staff members, in addition to Alice over here holding us down part-time. But it's surreal to think about how big our team is grown to this point, but also continues to grow as the needs of our community are big, right? And we have a lot of work to do. So, shout out to all of you that are willing to even help us in that way, and helping be able to continue to grow our team, to be able to have a robust group of people that are also, what I think is so beautiful about our team is that we reflect the students that we serve. And I think that's a huge part of our commitment to the leadership that we want to also amplify, is that's the experiences that we've gone through ourselves, right? Trying to figure out what it means to be Latinx in the South, figuring out how to navigate college, trying to figure out how to be a first generation college student. On those journeys, even for me, I think going deeper, being from rural areas, being from a low-income family, like that's my journey, and that's our journey, right? And we get to connect with our students in such a personal way, that the message that we're also being able to offer is that there's hope, like we get to turn around and make sure that we're opening the door for the next generation to keep coming, and to feel like they have a support system in that journey. And so that's really what we want to offer our community. And it's been so beautiful to also be somewhat young in this space too, very much hustlers over here, in the sense of just, we're working hard, and also figuring out how to really, I think at the end of the day, we're all working towards freedom, right? And working towards ways that our community can be free to dream and to manifest their vision for their families and for their futures. And so our tagline is dreams to action. And we very much believe in that. Like, how do we take these dreams and actually turn them into a reality for our community? So we have a big vision. It's bold, and, it requires fearless leadership. And so that's why I'm just going to shout out to you, Ricky, as we wrap up this conversation. It's just been such an honor to work with you, and to be able to be those two parts of a different brain coming together and really connecting, whether that's practice to policy, and really trying to get creative and also strategic on how we actually do the work. And honestly, cannot imagine doing it with anybody else. So it's been such an honor, truly, to be in the trenches. Let me stop before I get emotional. But also, like, what I think, I was thinking before this conversation is that we've been so much, on the ground hustling, trying to make this all work, that there is these moments of reflection are so special, honestly. And that we get to even have this little video to look back on when, we're far off into the next stage. But it's been an honor and a blessing to be able to kind of be in the trenches with you in particular too, and manifesting this, especially just being able to also lean into who we are as our authentic selves, and be able to manifest that too, and grow, and be open to that growth. It's been a journey and a pleasure.
Well, the love is mutual, and of course that. I don't think that any of this would be possible without you. You very much were instrumental as students, as college students, in making SLI what it was. And then when we sunset that and launched LatinxEd, you've always sort of had the answers on how to move us forward. And so you've put in the time, you've put in the work, you have grown a beautiful team that I never in a million years could have imagined. And so yeah, this work would not be possible without you. And you're leaving such a beautiful love letter to North Carolina. And there's so many future generations that are going to benefit from your vision. So grateful to be doing this with you.
That means a lot. It means a lot. And I think what's also fascinating about our working relationship too is that I don't see very many like, you know, a man-woman kind of partnerships in this type of work too. And so it's been like so fun too. I'm gonna put that out there. Okay, it's been a lot of fun because we are very much siblings at this point. And so that's been a really fun part of our, you know, kind of partnership to lean into, because you keep me laughing, okay? And I try to do the same, but it is hilarious also working with you, and just how different we are, but also how similar we are. It's been a lot of fun too. And just, I think that's reflected in our team environment as well. We always laughing out here, okay, and also trying to like preserve our joy in this process.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's so monumental and like essential.
I mean, it's so easy to get cynical with the state of our politics and our country and everything that's happened in our community the last few years. But you've always found somehow to sort of center joy and love in our work. And so, you know, that takes a special person. So go Elaine.
Oh, wow. Keep it here. Stop. You know, so funny. I can't handle it. But actually, we did have one question, and I know we're on time right now, so we're going to wrap up. But let's wrap up on this question because it's so important. So somebody asked, Ricky, why did you decide to run for office? Which, you know, surprise to everybody else out there that didn't know. If you've been living under a rock, you know, now you know that Ricky is running for office. Could you tell us a little bit? Because the people want to know. Okay.
Yeah, the people want to know. I'll make my answer quick with a potential promise that if people really want to have this conversation, we do a Cafecito Part 2 where we're talking about civic engagement and the elections this fall, because so much is at stake in North Carolina and across the nation. And young Latinos could actually make the difference in the direction of the state, of this nation, and dare I say the world. I mean, the stakes are that high. And, you know, a lot of people say that every election, this is the most important election ever. No, this is the most important election of a generation. And I want to see 100% participation of our community, because that is what it's going to take for us to really have a voice in this process and make sure that we have a say in the direction of our community over the next few years. That is why I'm running. You know, the stakes are that high, right? And for me, it was sort of a culmination of seeing what's happening in our school systems, what's happening on the ground, the challenges that our families face every day, the stories that we've heard of the uninsured, folks who struggle with housing insecurity. We know the mothers that work 1-2 jobs and something on the side to make sure they put food on the table. We've seen these stories day in and day out. There are stories, right? Like, we've seen how hard our parents have struggled to get by in this world. All of those sacrifices for what, right? To just continue struggling 40 years later, to continue living paycheck to paycheck. And so much of it, I want to say, is rooted in love and in a belief that we can be better. But a lot of it is also rooted in pain, right? To know that this is happening to people across North Carolina, in every county that is here in our state. I want to say that sort of connection to the issues has really propelled me to want to do more, because we know that so many of the challenges that we see are systemic in nature. When we're talking about financial security for families, when we're talking about access to healthcare, when we're talking about the state of our public schools. We've been to the General Assembly to talk about education equity issues. We've done it together, and I've done it several times in the last few years. And what has really struck me is the fact that we have leaders that don't get it. We have leaders who are disconnected from our communities. There are leaders that refuse to hear our stories. And I think that is frustrating. And it's reached a point where I've asked, you know, in the words of President Obama, right? If not who, then us. If not now, then when? And so, you know, it's from dreams to action, you know, and we are, I know you feel a little way about this, but, you know, we are ancestors' wildest dreams, right? And I need to make sure I put my own privilege of citizenship, of college degrees, of living comfortably now, right? I don't have to live paycheck to paycheck like my parents did. What am I doing to make this world better? And I see our students every day, and want to make sure that we are making it a little easier for them when they're our age, and for future generations as well. So that is my short spill. We could unpack all of that and what that looks like. If y'all want a cafecito part 2, just drop it, comment or something. We can make sure we bring other voices as well to talk about what civic engagement looks like and how that ties into our work as well.
100%. And shameless plug there. Okay, when we talk about dreams are complex, right? Like dreams have all these nuances for the why it's a dream, or like why it needs what. There's often a necessity behind it too, right? And a necessity for change, I think, is part of that. And so I'm over here like, yes, picking up everything you're putting down, Ricky. And I mean, shout out to all these, if you're watching this video, okay, we need to help also turn this dream into a reality, into action. And that's going to require collective action. And we all have to do it together. It can't just be on the shoulders of a few, and whether that's, us tapping into our resources, maybe that's financially, maybe that is the platforms that you have or whatnot. Like there's all these ways that we can get creative, right, on how we can manifest the dreams that need to be reality, right, and to really play a critical role in making it happen. So this is your, if you're listening right now, this is your call to action, okay, to find your place in our movement. And there is a place for you, on so many different levels. So if you're trying to figure it out, all you got to do is reach out and we'll help you navigate that. And just know that you're ready, we're ready, waiting here with welcome arms, to help you be part of this family. That's really mobilizing in such a powerful, beautiful, and intentional way. So it's been an honor, Ricky. Look at us, tradition going over time. I love it. For it. But it's been, again, such a blessing to be able to have this conversation with you, get real, get deep, get reflective, and also just kind of like unveil it in a very real time way, kind of way, because history and telling history is complicated, right? There's all these details, so an hour doesn't really do justice to the history, but we wanted to start the conversation and continue it, right? And so we are excited to continue this work and hope that you all can be a part of it. And Ricky, thank you for your time and for your voice.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. Namaste. Okay, right. I was like, wait a minute. Just kidding. All right. Well, lots of love, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. People, I'm seeing in the comments they want a part 2. Okay, so
okay.
Stay tuned.
People want it. Okay. We'll do it.
Stay tuned. All right. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your week. Bye.
See y'all.